What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Big Five Pod, episode number 88. Cope, it's fitting that it's 88. 88 is a very big hockey number. And as of this recording, the Eastern Conference Finals are still going on. So I'm locked in, but we're also locked in on the Big Five. Jake Copestick, how we doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I've been staying locked in on the Big Five so that way you can stay locked in on your Rangers. Both series been very, very good.
Yeah.
Um, look, I'll say this. I know I've said this a bunch of times. I don't know if I've said it on here, but I'm going to say it anyway in the event that I haven't. The second best postseason in sports behind March Madness is the Stanley Cup Finals, and it's delivering again this year.
Yep. Best professional postseason in sports. I don't think there's a ton of argument there. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of great postseasons where we're not going to act like there's not. But listen, this is the crown jewel of it all. This is might not be the most exciting regular season, but it's definitely the most exciting postseason. So we're locked in. It's also extremely intense when your team is in it, and I'm fortunate that my team is in the position that they are in. But it is intense, so that's that. Listen, we have a lot to get into. So while I would love to talk about the Rangers the entire time, unfortunately, we cannot do that. Cope, I do want to turn it over to your quick hitters, so make sure you grab that ball. But first, I think we have a combined quick hitter for this one. Because unfortunately, this week, college basketball legend, NBA legend, broadcasting legend, American icon, Bill Walton's passed away at the age of 71 after a battle with cancer. Listen, his accomplishments fly off the page. I'm going to read them real quick. Obviously, Basketball Hall of Famer, two-time NCAA champion, two-time AP Player of the Year, three-time Naismith Award winner, three-time consensus All-American from his time at UCLA. And then, of course, in the NBA, NBA MVP, NBA Finals MVP, Sixth Man of the Year, Hall of Famer. Um, this dude was an incredible basketball player. His injuries, of course, slowed down his career in the NBA a little bit, especially after his time in Portland, where he did win the NBA MVP and championship. But even after that is, I think, when he became like the true essence of the Bill Walton that we all know and love, broadcasting the Pac-12. Um, Cope, I don't like. I want to say it's ever fitting when someone passes away, especially if someone of this magnitude. But it was kind of fitting that the last Pac-12 event ever happened with Arizona walking off USC in the Pac-12 baseball championship, and then I think this happened a day or two later. Um, he was the Conference of Champions. He loved the Pac-12. He loved everything about it. He loved broadcasting it. Um, he truly was not just a basketball icon, but a Pac-12 icon as well. So take a minute here to talk about him. I just said my piece about him. Obviously, just an effervescent personality. Um, Someone you could always look to laugh, but also get good analysis, and he will be deeply missed. So, Cope, definitely want to give you a minute to talk on the icon that is Bill Walton.
Yeah, absolutely. And before you even talk about basketball, like guy was just a free bird. He was a free spirit. I mean, he said whatever came to his mind. Like even if it was a bunch of funny stuff, you find yourself getting so sidetracked watching a Pac-12 game because he's talking about Dave Pasch sat next to him, asked him about his cat the one time, and then Dave Pasch is like, "Yeah, my cat died 2 years ago." Like funny stuff like that where you see it, it's just hysterical and keep you up, late at night when you're wrecking your sleep schedule watching the conference champions. But not only a great player, a great broadcaster that kept you engaged with his funny stuff, but how about just a cheerleader for the sport as well? A guy that just loved the sport, loved the Pac-12. If it was up to him, I mean, the whole conference would be in the NCAA tournament every year. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you'd be watching Washington State and like Stanford. None of these teams have a shot at the tournament, yet he's saying that we need to get him in because they're playing a competitive game on like a Thursday night. So yeah, he'll be missed. Just a fun guy that seemed to enjoy life and make everything positive and everything fun and everything happy. And obviously he will be missed. I think by everybody. Like even if you're not a sports fan, I think you can appreciate the kind of person that he was. But he will be missed. And I think it is fitting. Like the Pac-12, is no more, and he wrote it out with the Pac-12. So an all-time great. And hey, if he doesn't have, he's already a Hall of Famer. He's already an all-time great. And if he doesn't have those foot injuries, I mean, you're having a conversation of him. I mean, he already is up there, but even more so being one of the best to ever play. I mean, he had a great career and was slowed down immensely by injury. So on and off the court, somebody that we can all miss and can appreciate.
Yeah, and there's a lot of lessons you can take from Bill Walton. It's just positivity and gratitude for life that not a lot of people have, especially anymore. So definitely will be sorely missed, not only in the basketball world, but in the world in general. So definitely want to touch on that. But Cope, we've got other quick hitters. There's been a lot going on in Big Five land. So get that ball, get ready, run this break. Let's do it.
Well, I hope you're in shape, Kyle. I have the ball here. I told you
I
before
don't
we
know.
got on, this was going to be this is enough quick hitters for a two-a-day practice. I mean, there's stuff just comes out of the woodworks. Like 30 minutes before we got on, I see a ruling that the NCAA is now going to allow an extra year of eligibility to all transfers that had to sit out prior to 2019, 2021 and had to actually sit when they had transferred a year. So stuff just keeps coming. We don't stop here. But first of all, we're going to start with St. Joe's. I tried to sort this by school. I think the facilities, like kind of arms race in college athletics, is interesting when you see just how committed a school and a university is to making sure they have the best facilities, whether that's a locker room, practice facility, a game arena, locker rooms, amenities, nutrition stations, weight rooms, stuff like that. All this crazy rehab and cryotherapy and nap pods and stuff like that. I think that's real interesting to see a school's commitment to their athletic programs. And St. Joseph's, they're going to be upgrading their basketball practice facilities as well as some other sports as well. Will be named the McGuire Athletic Center after it's renovated. James J. McGuire, class of 1958, he assisted in they have raised $27 million so far for the renovation, Kyle. Doesn't sit then the way it sounded, it's they're not done quite yet. So they're going to add lounge areas, a nutrition station, and more spaces for more sports than just basketball. Like I mentioned, they're going to have an erg room for rowing, an upgraded golf team room, and then a large indoor multi-purpose practice field that lacrosse and other sports can use, a weight room and a sports medicine suite. And then specifically for basketball, 2 full-size practice courts, exclusive strength training and rehab spaces solely for the men's and women's basketball team. So these are regarded as, this is going to put St. Joseph's in really the cream of the crop in the Atlantic 10 when it comes to facilities for basketball, which we know can be so important with the bells and whistles and anything you can use to give yourself a competitive advantage. So pretty cool news out of St. Joe's. We'll move to Temple now. Obviously, NIL is huge. Kyle, when we were at Adam Fisher's press conference, we got to meet Andy Carl, who does a lot of good work for the Tough Fund and works very hard to try to get donors and other people to give to the Tough Fund to then disperse to Temple student athletes. But they have announced the Temple alumni, the Al Elite Fund. The Tough Fund is a nonprofit. This is a for-profit NIL collective. So it started by Larry Parisi, who's a former TU student athlete, and Jackie Dansack Esquire, who is a graduate of Temple's Beasley School of Law. A lot of experience between these two with brand management, monetization, business, and stuff like that. And they signed a 1-year deal with Innovative New Media, who will help monetize Temple student athletes with brand deals and targeted campaigns. So they're going to be doing even more so now with a for-profit NIL collective, bringing in other ventures as far as Innovative New Media. They've really shown a commitment here to their student athletes, trying to get them as much NIL money and opportunity and business monetization as possible. So huge step in the right direction for our alma mater, Kyle. I think you have to be really excited about this.
Oh, yeah.
Staying with Temple. How about Deontay Christmas? Going to be inducted into the Temple Sports Hall of Fame. He's one of 4 Temple players in the school's history to score over 2,000 points. He's the school's all-time leader in three-pointers made with 319 career three-pointers. And, funny thing here, I remember being really young and watching that, even after the fact, watching that highlight video when Bruce Pearl's number 8 Tennessee Volunteers came to town at the League Force Center. I think it was a Saturday on ESPN. And, this team is ranked in the top 10. And Deontay Christmas lit him up for 35 points and made 7 threes in that game.
Yeah.
So good for him. One of Temple's all-time great basketball players, now going to be enshrined there forever in the Hall of Fame. So congrats to Mr. Christmas. Moving on, Jordan Dingle, formerly of Penn, played at St. John's this last season, and Chris Ledlam, who of course was at St. John's, but was also in the Ivy League at Harvard. They were denied an extra year of eligibility in a lawsuit that they had filed against the NCAA. This week, a Queens judge denied injunctive relief for the duo. Last month, they applied for a 5th year. However, they were both denied right after they sued the NCAA for a temporary restraining order to try and get the year back. And it's kind of tricky because although the Ivy League canceled their season during COVID, the Ivy League players were not like they couldn't take advantage of because the league had made that decision. So they still both of them got 4 years in. They tried to get the fifth year. That was officially denied this week, so their college careers are over. Moving on to Villanova, a couple things here. Redshirt freshman Jordan Dumont, he will be sidelined indefinitely after undergoing double arthroscopic hip surgery. He still has 4 years remaining after redshirting last year, and there's no timetable for his recovery. So the roster's not done yet, so it's hard to say definitively what his role would have been if he was healthy. But I'm no doctor. I don't know how long this takes to get back. I know Trey Patterson had this surgery last year, but he also had to repair a torn labrum, which kept him out even longer. So I don't know how long this keeps him out for, but there's no timetable yet. So we will see. Hopefully there's not a scenario where Mr. Dumont needs to redshirt another year with an injury. But he got that surgery, no timeline for when he'll be back. And then how about Villanova AD Mark Jackson, just appointed to the NCAA D1 men's basketball committee that Arthur Johnson is also one from Temple. Barry Collier from Butler, he stepped down. He's retiring. He was the Big East men's basketball representative on the committee, so Mark Jackson will now step in. He will work with Dan Gavitt, who's the NCAA senior vice president of basketball and men's basketball staff on the D1 men's basketball championship. So this could be, Mark Jackson, Kyle, could potentially be a guy that now has a say in NCAA tournament expansion. I think that's the thing to circle the most here is that you have a guy at a local school here and a really prominent program with quite a bit of money and a good conference who now could have a say in that. So we'll see if anything comes of that now that we have two Big Five people on the men's basketball committee. Let's get into some coaching news. Not a hire to speak of, but there was some rumblings on Twitter that there was a job posting for an assistant coach at Villanova. People had speculated, is somebody leaving? Are they going to let somebody go? It turns out that wasn't actually the case. So according to Brian Ewert on Twitter, Brian, I hope I said your name right, man. Apologies if not. The NCAA increased the number of assistant coaches a basketball program can have by 2 in January of 2023. However, the one stipulation, these positions, they can't recruit off campus. But Villanova has not they have not taken advantage of these 2 spots yet. So bottom line here being Villanova put this job posting out, not as if somebody was being let go, but they're finally going to fill at least one of these spots now. So, to clear that up with Villanova, because I saw that on Twitter and I was trying to speculate, who was leaving or whatnot, but they're just going to take advantage of those spots that they're now allotted. We'll get into some scheduling news now, Kyle. The Big Five Classic schedule finally got released.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we don't have dates and times as far as the pod matchups go. Obviously, all of them are just the inverse of last year. So in case you forgot, LaSalle will be at Drexel, Temple will be at LaSalle, and Drexel will be at Temple this year. And then in pod number 2, St. Joseph's going to the Palestra. Penn will be at Villanova after upsetting them at the Palestra last year. And then the Holy War will be played on Hawk Hill this year after St. Joe's snapped a long losing streak against Villanova at the Finn this year. And then, of course, the triple header, once again at the Wells Fargo Center. That will be Saturday, December 7th, which I don't have a calendar in front of me, but would think it's probably the first Saturday in December, just like it was last year. So there's that. We'll keep you updated on when we get the dates and times for the pod matchups, but at least we have when the triple header will be, and then it'll be at Wells Fargo again. 2 more things to knock off here, and then we can get into some transfer portal stuff. So St. Joseph's, they had added, they added a non-conference game last week that I touched on. Kids, can't think of who it was. Maybe I'll
got a lot of information on your plate.
Yeah, got a lot happening here. A lot of yapping from me. They're going to host Central Connecticut State in their non-conference schedule. That game will be played. It was Coppin State.
There it is. Yep.
Thought of it. But they're going to host Central Connecticut State. That game will be played on Friday, November 8th at Hagan Arena. They've only played, because I like to do the game history. How many times have they played? Do they have a winning record against this team? Only played them one other time. And that was at Hagan Arena pretty recently. It was on December 22nd, 2022, an 83-66 win for the Hawks. So they will have their second matchup against Central Connecticut State coming up as they start to fill out their non-conference schedule, which with some return games, I'm pretty sure is almost done. And then lastly, LaSalle, we updated you last week. They're going to be playing in the Boardwalk Battle right the week before Thanksgiving in Daytona Beach. That will take place from Thursday, November 21st to Saturday, November 23rd. Those dates were just put out. We said that Toledo and Stetson are in the field, and added to those teams is UC San Diego, East Carolina, the UIC Flames, and Jacksonville State was just added. So as far as dates go, we don't have those just yet. But as far as teams go, we do have some of that for you. So, Kyle, I'm almost sick of
Take a breath,
talk.
dude. That's a performance.
Yeah.
Golly, give it up for
on.
Cope. That's a lot going on. Listen, I will say about the Boardwalk Battle. They need one more team. We're only at 7. I can't do a ton of math, but I can do a little bit. So we'll obviously keep you updated on what team will be added to that, but it'll be a good tournament for LaSalle to play in. So we're excited for that.
And if they need us to go down and cover, we'll do it.
If they need us to go down and cover, we'll do it. Absolutely. We can be there for that one. All right. Cope, you take a breath. That was a lot. We'll get into some transfer portal stuff right now. Honestly, it's not a lot of teams that have a lot, but the teams we are going to cover have a lot to go over. So we're going to go over that right now. Penn, Drexel, Temple, all no new news there, which I guess new news isn't bad news. So nothing bad on that front. We'll get into LaSalle though now. They got a commitment from Trinity Community College. Cope, I probably will mispronounce his name. Mamadou Cisse. How did I do?
I think it's Mahamadou.
Mahamadou Cisse. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on it. We're gonna get familiarized with his name, but committed to LaSalle from Trinity Community College. Previously played in the Atlantic 10 at St. Louis. Listen, we have talked about it as with other teams that LaSalle definitely needed some front court help. So not a bad situation here. Hopefully, someone who's experienced in the A10. Obviously, there's some talent there. If he played in the A10, coming over from the community college ranks, Kobe, I'll ask you about that in a minute. But also, I think probably the bigger news, which I think people might have been expecting, but is official. Khalil Brantley is transferring to Oklahoma State. So he is going to make the jump into a power conference, power team here in Oklahoma State. A little bit about this team. Mike Boynton was fired, and they hired Western Kentucky's Steve Lutz as their new head coach. Has made the last 3 NCAA tournaments, 2 with A&M Corpus Christi, 1 with Western Kentucky. So he's making another jump there for Mike Boynton, for Steve Lutz. And they also added other guards too. Arturo Dean from Florida International, Devo Davis from Arkansas, Brandon Newman from Western Kentucky following his head coach. So it will be a little bit of a crowded backcourt, but we know how talented Khalil Brantley is. I definitely think he can make a splash there at Oklahoma State. We'll start with him, and then we'll go to Mahamadou Cisse as well. But what are your thoughts on Brantley leaving the program he's been at for a few years now, trying to level up and get some good playing time and on a good team, hopefully, for Oklahoma State?
Yeah, I touched on this last week, but I didn't want to just, I just mentioned that he had gone there. I wanted to talk about it a little more because he was a damn good player at LaSalle and deserves a little bit more than that. So, yeah, I mean, if he wants the opportunity to go elsewhere, and I think Jameer Brickus leaving, pretty much opened the door for him to leave as well. But yeah, kind of came out of left field to transfer here. But as Steve Lutz tries to put together a team at Oklahoma State in his first year there, he was down to Khalil Brantley was down to Washington State. He was down to Utah. Aaron Bracey reported that Miro Little from Baylor committed to Utah, which probably shut the door on that. But then once he decided he was going elsewhere, it was kind of like, well, if it's not Washington State, where could it be? And then Oklahoma State joins the sweepstakes, and they hop in here. I will say this about Steve Lutz. This guy just wins. He just wins. I mean, they had Marquette on the ropes last year in the first round. They were the 15 seed out of CUSA. Western Kentucky was. They had him on the ropes. All this guy does is win.
3/4 of that game.
Yeah, for a good chunk of that game, they were had him on the ropes, who were winning. So he's a damn good coach to play for. An interesting note about Western Kentucky here, Kyle, because we know about Khalil Brantley. He can defend. He's quick. He's fast. I mean, good luck staying in front of him and Jameer Brickus. That's what I said a zillion times when they were both playing for LaSalle. But This guy, Steve Lutz, last year, the Hilltoppers, Kyle, Western Kentucky, they played the fastest tempo in America combined. They were the fourth fastest on offense. So when you have a quick, fast twitch guy like Khalil Brantley, I think will actually fit his playing style pretty well. Even in year one, and even with some other guards coming in. Devo Davis is a damn good player at Arkansas. I mean, he had a huge game when they upset Kansas after they had won the national championship that year in the tournament. Brandon Newman comes over for Western Kentucky, and then, of course, you have a Troy Dean who's a defensive-minded guard from FIU. But I think he can fit in nicely. I think there's a role here. And look, he's made the last three tournaments. Now, Oklahoma State, they only made the tournament once under Mike Boynton. But I'm telling you, this is one of the best hires of the offseason. All Steve Lutz does is win. He won at A&M Corpus Christi, which is a very hard job in the Southland, and then went to Conference USA and won right away. So it's a good coach in a really good league. And, he's probably not going to be tasked with a ton on his plate with some other guards there. I think this is a good spot for him. And good luck to him because he was a damn good player at LaSalle. Deserves that shot to move up to one of the, if not the best conference in college basketball and see what he can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we all saw the talent. He deserves a shot. And I think that system's going to be great for him. So best of luck to Khalil Brantley. Thank you for your time at LaSalle. Hopefully we'll see you in the tournament next year. All right. And then Cisse, Cope. So Mamadou Cisse commits to LaSalle. Obviously, we talked about them needing front court help. Hopefully this will help out with that with some size here. What do you make of this commitment from someone who had played in the A-10 already, now going over to LaSalle?
Yeah, he very seldom played that 1 year at St. Louis for Travis Ford. But regardless, LaSalle saw that last year when, Rokas, who's prone to fouling a little bit, getting in foul trouble when, he would go to the bench. He really didn't have anybody else. Ryan Zan comes in there. Ryan Zan's not a five. He doesn't have the size to be a five in a league where, there's a Neil Quinn, and even though he's graduating, but you get what I'm saying, some other bigger players. So LaSalle saw that as a weakness last year, and then you see what they've done. They still have Deshaun Shepard. They get him to come out of the portal for another year. They still have Tunde Valberg-Fasasi. Jaleel White comes in as a taller guy with some length as a big forward. And then they add Demetrius Lilly, and then they get Mamadou Cisse. So now they have two centers. They added some, a big forward in Jaleel White as a nice athlete. I think athleticism-wise, length-wise, size-wise, they saw that as a weakness, and they really, hammered that home and made that a strength, in my opinion. So they now have two big guys. So they have, God forbid, Meech Lilly or Cisse getting foul trouble. You have somebody else. I think he'll probably be the guy that comes off the bench. I do think Demetrius Lilly is probably your starter for LaSalle. Yeah. But now there's some size, some length, some athleticism here. And I think that's what the biggest thing is. There's some depth. And I'd said about LaSalle last year, between Rokas and the guards, they weren't very big. They didn't have the size length that a Jaleel White and a Cisse are going to bring in here. So it's big for that to happen for LaSalle. There's some depth up front, some size, some length. It's traits like that they were missing last year that I thought could really, really help them. So it's kind of different because, last year they had the experience as far as the guards went. But, Anwar Gill and Brickus and Brantley all leave. And it's kind of the reverse now. They're going to be very young as far as guards go, but they're going to have some experience, and then they're going to have some depth up front. So I thought this is a very, very good pickup for LaSalle. I believe they're out of scholarships now. I think they're full, just like Penn is as well. But, yeah, from last year's roster to this year's roster, I think that's what the most promising thing is here. They saw there was a weakness that they had last year, and they went and they made sure that was a strength or something that's at least not going to hurt them as much as it did last year. So really like the pickup, and it checks a lot of boxes for LaSalle that they were still missing and something that they certainly didn't have last year.
Yeah, they were thin last year in the front court. I mean, like you said, it was Rokas, and then it wasn't a whole lot after him.
Well, they were thin in general to be. They were just a thin team in general, and that I think will change a lot this year.
I think so too. I definitely think this is a good pickup. You can't have too much depth, especially when you're competing in a conference as talented as the A-10. I know sometimes, we talk about them only being a 1 or 2 bid league or whatever, but there's still some talented teams in this conference, and LaSalle has had some talent, but they have not had the complete team the other teams in the conference have had. So it'll be good for them to actually have some depth, have some talent. Hopefully Philadelphia gets them in a place where they're making a run later this year. All right, Cope, we're going to skip the big meat of what we want to talk about right now. We're going to go to just one other note before we get into is Villanova. Spoiler alert. There's a lot going on with Villanova. So we're gonna go to St. Joe's first. We're gonna go to the other side of the Holy War here. Um, they just have one player with news, and that's Rasheer Fleming. He had entered the NBA draft, took it down to the wire of when he could decide if he wanted to stay in the draft or come back to school, and he has decided to come back to Hawk Hill for his junior season. I don't think there's enough ways for me to describe how important this is for the for Salle. We're done talking about them. For St. Joe's, um, this is a guy who, provides a lot of length, provides a lot of athleticism. Now his experience going into year three. Definitely going to be looked at to provide scoring for them this year. And just another player who, this team, even though last year we kind of billed them as, that was the most talented team of the Billy Lang era, this team, I don't know exactly. They're still going to be really talented though, and they're still going to have a good shot in the A10. So this happening for them is huge. So I want to get your thoughts on it because this is something that could definitely, put a dent in not only St. Joe's season for their opponents, but also the conference. This is very big A10 conference news as well.
Yeah, this is huge. And if you don't have Rasheer Fleming in this spot and he decides to keep his name in the NBA draft, and you have, maybe an Anthony Finkley or Sean Simmons, and if it's not them, you got a freshman starting. So to bring him back, although they lost Lingrier, although they lost Kriisa Sonnigo, the three most important guys they needed to keep were Xavier Brown, Eric Reynolds, and Rasheer Fleming. And they did that. And I really like the pieces they added around them with Justice Ajabo and Derek Simpson. So it's a very, very good starting five, one of the best in the Atlantic 10. They're, again, will go into the preseason ranked very high in that top five in the Atlantic 10. And, once again, when it comes conference tournament time, if they stay healthy, they should be there once again, potentially playing in the semifinals for a chance to go to the NCAA tournament. So it's a massive, massive decision for St. Joe's. Now, he's an NBA player. I believe that. Billy Lang believes that. At one of the post-game press conferences at the A10 tournament, Billy said that he thinks Rasheer is going to be playing in arenas like the Barclays Center for a long time. And I think it also speaks to his NBA interest that he kept his name in that long, and he was still working out for teams up to the wire. I had a chance. I was sitting next to an NBA scout when I was at the A10 tournament, and they had said that their philosophy now is your bigs, you're not really posting people up. They said that the Celtics post up maybe 13% of the time. That's the most in the league, and they post up mismatches. They don't just sit the big on the block and have them go to work.
Yeah.
They said that you need forwards like Rasheer Fleming, long, big, athletic. But when he sets a screen at the top of the key and he dives down the middle of the floor, he's got to be able to hit people. He's got to be able to make a quick decision. He's got to be able to, if they're going to double team somebody in a ball screen, and then he's going to slip the screen, catch the ball, and it's a 4-on-3. You got to be able to make a quick decision and get somebody an open three, get somebody a basket. You attack the basket yourself. Like that's really what bigs in the NBA are kind of coming to now. And I think he can fit that build, especially with what he gives on defense. He's got to shoot the ball a little better, which I think is absolutely his biggest thing he's got to prove this year. But there's a lot to like about Rasheer Fleming from an NBA standpoint. Probably could have gone this year, but I do think it's a good move for everybody involved that he comes back, because he's still going to be, and he's still going to draw NBA interest next year, and he's just going to be able to drive up his pro stock as he goes into another year where he's going to be a full-time starter and have a lot expected of him. So massive news for St. Joe's. Will be another very good team this year, but for Rasheer Fleming, I think only good things are gonna come for him, and I think one more season can't hurt, because I think he's that good of a player. He's one of my favorite guys in the Big Five. I think one more year will only help him as far as his pro stock goes, and it'll be for playing for a very good team as well.
Absolutely will be playing for a very good team. And yeah, I mean, there's his game is very good. There's definitely some things to work on, like his 3-point shooting, like his passing. Maybe trying to be a little bit more of a creator. I don't know if that's something that Billy Lang and the coaching staff have in the plans for him, but he's a really, really talented player, and he took a leap last year. I think he's going to take an even bigger leap this year. He will probably be their number 3 option on offense behind Brown and Eric Reynolds. So not in that order, of course, but those are just the 2 players that came to mind first. But he's going to be up there. He's going to be getting his. So he's going to take a leap this year. Very excited for him to come back. I think it's great for his development, like you said. And obviously, selfishly, it's great for St. Joe's and their quest for an A10 title, first one in quite some time. All right, Cope. We got Villanova to go over, and we got a lot of Villanova to go over. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, Fresno State center Enoch Boyachi. I think I said that right. Committed to the Wildcats. This is according to Jeff Nyberg of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Excuse me. His plan is to play at the 5, and they'll have Eric Dixon at the 4. Spoiler: actually, Eric Dixon's coming back. We're going to talk about that in a second. Um, Listen, this guy, you want to talk about a big guy. This guy's a big guy. 6'11", 250, 1 year of eligibility remaining. Fun note, tallest guy on the roster since Daniel Oshefu on the 2015-2016 national championship team. So how about that? They have not had a guy of this magnitude lengthwise in quite some time. Also, the last player on Villanova to average over a block a game was Amari Spellman, who was on the 2017-18 national team. So getting a lot of championship team crossovers of someone who fits this mold. But listen, size has been, obviously we've talked about it with Salle, we talked about it with other teams in the past, but Villanova's also been a team that's needed this kind of size. Eric Dixon had been playing kind of the 4 and 5 in his career and definitely fits better at the 4. I think he's an undersized 5. He can play there. I mean, he's matched up against some of the best in the Big East and in the country for that matter. But in terms of just positioning, having someone like him to go up against the Ryan Kalkbrenners of the world, obviously Klingon's not going to be there anymore, but guys like him is going to be huge. So Cope, how big is it to get someone literally quite this big in the lineup, someone who's got experience for a team that, that needs it?
Yeah, they certainly needed size, but Kyle, they just kind of fill roster spots.
That
I mean,
too,
they
yeah.
they still have they still need to just put the pieces together here. So to get, and it's Enoch Bowachi. You're close.
Enoch Bowachi.
You're close.
Listen, we're learning.
Yeah.
I'd rather butcher it in May than butcher it in February. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I thought you were gonna butcher the last name. That's why I put a sounded out
No,
thing.
I saw the phonetic spelling and I was like, all right, I got that down. I don't know exactly how to say his first name, but we figured it out.
But close enough. It was a good try if it was nothing else.
Thank you.
So yeah, to get Enoch Bowachi is quite literally big because they didn't have anybody else besides Eric Dixon. They needed a guy in the front court here. They just needed a body. He only played 22 some minutes, a game at Fresno State. At this, a guy like this at least gives him the option to play with a natural 5. I don't think this is a guy you're not gonna see him out there for 30 some minutes a game. I think it's good that he can Dixon can slide to the 4, he can stretch the floor a little bit, but this isn't some guy that's like gonna fill it up in the post with his back to the basket. Like, he can be a roller in a pick and roll and get his own that way. As a big dude, like he wants to punch on your head. He wants to dunk the ball. If he doesn't want to lay it up, if he gets the ball inside, like he wants to dunk it. But it's just kind of weird. He doesn't really fit the archetype of a Villanova player because although, it's crazy, he's the biggest guy since Ochefu. Like that's just the way they play. There's a guy that he gives you size, that should translate to rebounds. He blocked 1.5 shots a game last year. Like he can't shoot. He certainly cannot shoot from the free throw line. He's a sub 50% free throw shooter. And you talk about Villanova, who's was the best free throw shooting team last year. The year they made the Final Four in Jay Wright's last year, the best free throw shooting team. Like this is not a guy that's going to help that cause. Late game, probably not a guy you went out there. So I think he can play, but this isn't going to be like a 30-some minutes guy.
No.
It just gives him the option to play with somebody big, and you can slide Dixon to the 4 so he doesn't have to play full-time 5 all the time. Not that he can't. But it gives you a different look with Dixon being able to stretch the floor. So it's a necessary pickup. They need to fill roster spots. The pickings are slimmer than what they were the first week of the tournament when this thing opened up, even though the transfer portal should not open up then.
I was about to say that's a discussion for another day, but
yeah, which they did make a ruling on that. See, there's so much shit to go over. It's like you
I
can't
know.
cover. We would be here till 10 o'clock if you wanted me to cover all the news in depth. And quite frankly, I don't even want to be here.
I don't listen. Love you, but
I don't think anybody wants to hear
good.
me talk any more than I do anyway.
No,
but It's a necessary pickup. They need to fill roster spots. This gives them some versatility with what they can do with Eric Dixon playing him with a natural five, but there is some shortcomings here. I mean, it's not like you know what I mean? This isn't like a crazy heady center that's going to make passes out of the post, that has a good back to the basket game, who can shoot a lick at all, can't space the floor, can't shoot from the free throw line. So size, blocks, rebounds, sure, there's some stuff to like as a pick and roll guy, but there's also some things that are just, aren't what you would expect from a Villanova player. So
but my hope is that, like, and I don't mean to interrupt, but my hope is that, like, they don't try to make him into what a mold of their center was before. Let him play his game, because they brought him in for a reason. I mean, he's someone who can play the five, who's someone who's got size. He has a certain characteristic of his game that, yeah, maybe not prototypical for a Villanova center, but I don't think it's a concern, but something that could happen theoretically is that they try to make him be someone of a different mold. And I hope they don't, because he's a very specific player and probably one that Villanova needs, to be honest with you, especially with Dixon being at the four potentially the majority of the time that he's on the floor.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much of a concern, to be honest with you. I mean,
No.
he's in there to play the five. He's not in there to do anything crazy. Like he's moving Eric Dixon off the five spot to be able to do more power forward spots, stretch the floor, so he can step in and do that. So
That's mainly for Villanova fans who might get concerned that he can't hit a free throw. I know it's not what you're used to, but let him do his thing.
Yeah. So it's a solid pickup, but don't think there's going to be some game changer that's going to average like a double or anything like that. But he fits a need. There's some things he'll help out with, but I mean, legitimately, this is one of the worst free throw shooters Nova's had in like 10 years.
Yeah.
Because the whole team, that's what they're built. The whole team can make them. The whole team can make them in a pretty good clip. Like, this is one of the worst free throw shooters they've had in a very long time on the main line. So he'll help. But at this point, like, I feel like Nova's just trying to piece it together. It's almost like you can't be too particular at this point in time.
At this stage, yeah. All right. Listen, well, hopefully he fills his role nicely, because it is one that Villanova needs. So we will move on. Alrighty. Obviously, that's not the biggest news of this transfer cycle for Villanova. It's the fact that Eric Dixon's coming on back. And boy, are we happy about that. I know we just talked about Rasheer Fleming coming back, and that's big news. Eric Dixon's the biggest returning player of the Big Five, I think, this entire process, I guess, if you want to call it. I know obviously Eric Reynolds coming back is huge. That can't be understated. We did just talk about Fleming, but I think Dixon is the cream of the crop of all these guys. And he gave a little preview. He commented under Boyachi's Instagram page, "Let's work," like the day before he committed to coming back, and there was some speculation. Obviously, it became true. But listen, Dixon is probably going to be named to one of the first or second teams on all Big East preseason. He is just lights out. He led Villanova in total points last year, points per game at 16.6, minutes per game 30.6, total minutes too, obviously, rebounds per game at 6.5. He was their biggest contributor. A lot of times he was their offense. I mean, especially, we know how streaky they were at times last year. A lot of the time last year, if we're being frank. Eric Dixon is their rock. He is their best player. He has been their best player this will be year 3 now. This is huge for Villanova, for the Big Five, and for their chances of returning to the tournament for the first time in 3 years. So it cannot be understated what Eric Dixon means to this program. He's coming back for 5th season. Cope, obviously, there was question marks about whether he'd stay in the draft, whether he'd come back. I don't know if anyone really, really knew this entire time until, this past week or so, but talk to me about just how this changes the entire landscape of Villanova season, because especially with Shulga going back to VCU, obviously there's some transfer questions. They still have some roster spots to fill. This just makes it that much more safe. We got our guy back, and now we can look forward to the rest of the season.
Well, if he didn't come back, I don't think they had a shot to make the tournament whatsoever.
No,
I don't. They did not. They did not. So
they
for him to come
not,
back,
but
Yeah, they still might not because the Big East, like Xavier's going to be very good, and they've reloaded a bunch, and St. John's is still going to be very good. UConn's still going to be very good. Marquette, Creighton, Providence reloaded again. Kim English like really went on a tear in the portal, bringing guys back. Bryce Hopkins is going to come back after they didn't make a tournament this year, so it's it's a really good league they're in, and there's still a lot of work to do. And right now, Kyle, this is not a tournament team. It's not. Now there's still, they could get Luka Popper, who we'll talk about. They're not done yet, but if they wanted to have any shot of making the tournament, they needed this to happen. They needed Eric Dixon to come back. Like you said, he'll be their best player on the team. This upcoming year will be the third year running. You know how smart he is, being able to pass, being able to stretch the floor, being able to score underneath, get to the free throw line with how patient he is with pivots and footwork. They needed this to happen. They needed their fulcrum. They needed their guy who they could run some offense through to come back. And, you look at all the categories that you mentioned that he led in. I mean, to lose that would have been the biggest loss of the offseason. Not the guys graduate, not TJ Bamba leaving. Dixon not coming back would have been a massive, massive blow to this team. And I have no idea what the year could have looked like or what they would have done. Missing a guy who's as important as he is. So I'm sure there was some NBA interest. I know he worked out, I think, for the Spurs, worked out for a good amount of teams. But I did always think it wasn't his best interest to come back. You can be the best player on a team in a really good conference again. And you have one more year to prove yourself. So massive for Villanova. There's still a lot of work to go. But like I said, I still don't think this is not a tournament team, even with them. But if you didn't have him, this certainly sure as hell is not a tournament team.
No.
So massive to have him come back. He was second team All Big East last year, one Big Five player of the year. Him and Eric Reynolds were really splitting hairs with who could have won it. So for Big Five hoops, for Big East hoops, I mean, it's a really, really big addition for Eric Dixon to come back. But he whatever Villanova had as far as tournament hopes, he just salvaged whatever it was. Because if he wasn't there, Kyle, I don't know what the hell this team would have looked like this year. So it's absolutely massive. He was the most important for me. I mean, obviously St. Joe's looks a little different, but I think he's more vital to Villanova. Being in a better conference, and you look at, how they haven't really loaded in the portal like they have last year. They needed him back, and they needed him back badly. So huge that they have a guy come back. They'll have a little more continuity. Even though most of the guys from last year's start lineup are gone, but to have your best guy back obviously is massive. It's not rocket science. When your best player comes back, you'll be better. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Listen, we don't try to make it too complicated on this podcast very often, and we're not going to do that right now. Eric Dixon coming back is the most net positive thing that has happened in this transfer portal cycle. Again, maybe other than Eric Reynolds coming back for St. Joe's. Two clear-cut best players in the Big Five. Two absolutely vital pieces of their team. And for Eric Dixon coming back, like you said, it's just words can't even describe what it means. So yeah. Now, you mentioned open roster spots. Still have some work to do. This is not a tournament team right now, and I agree. There could be someone visiting right now who might change that if they can land them. And that's Luka Poplar. I know you mentioned it a few minutes ago briefly, but Philly native, potentially looking to come back to his roots. But we'll see. He's going to have some interest. He withdrew from the NBA draft, visiting Oregon sometime next week. So that'll be the week of June 3rd if this does not get released before June 3rd. And our friend Jeff Nyberg again pointed out Kentucky likely out of the running. They got Jackson Robinson from BYU, who is following Mark Pope over there. So this could get interesting, Cope, because Luka Poplar, I think Nova's been, I don't want to say the favorite, but they've been among the favorites for however long this Luka Poplar watch is going on for. Especially with Max Shulger returning to VCU, I think they were looking at him anyway, but it opened up even more of a need for him. So having him potentially be alongside Jameer Brickus in the Nova backcourt would be ginormous. Having someone who's played at the major D1 level at Miami, made a Final Four team, or was on a Final Four team, it would just be massive to have someone of that caliber, of that experience, joining them on the main line. Cope, I can't speak enough about it, so I'm going to let you do it instead. What would this mean for the Wildcats if they landed Luka Poplar?
Well, I definitely would feel better about this maybe being a potential tournament team if they got Wooga Poplar back because he's a borderline NBA guy, terrific athlete, can shoot the ball, can get to the basket. Like as far as a playmaker and a scorer goes, they need him. To every available dollar, every resource that they need. I saw Enoch Bowachi said that he was when he tweeted he was going to Nova. I mean, they got Dixon back, and then he was tweeting that they were trying to recruit Wooga Poplar and get on the phone with him. So no, this is exactly what Nova needs. They're missing a guy like this. With Max Schulga on the way out, this would be the perfect guy to step in and be a shooter, a playmaker, and a scorer, and a terrific athlete, a way better athlete than Schulga is,
Yeah.
to add in there. Because Schulga is going to be a big part of this. And then when he dropped out, I mean, there's still a huge void offensively as a playmaker that's there. So Wooga Poplar can absolutely take those minutes and be a better athlete as far as the replacement goes. But if like we're starting to get late here, a lot of people have committed, a lot of rosters are already full. Nova's got to do everything they can to get this guy if they want to be competitive and give themselves a shot. They, as a an NBA talent who, like you said, was on a Final Four team, been in college for some time now, has proven that he can score, can shoot, did it in the Power Five conference. You need him. You need this guy. So I don't know how much money they have or what they're dealing with, but you better throw the kitchen sink at him because when he goes to Oregon, Altman's great. They just made a tournament. They won a game, and Tony Stubblefield from the Big East, who just got fired from DePaul, he came over from Oregon. He was a part of that staff, and he is a relentless dude with a lot of energy and a great recruiter as well. So it's plausible that he could even go across the country, and although he's a Philly guy, could go to Oregon. Them moving into the Big Ten, like it could happen.
Yeah.
It could
100%.
happen. So it's not a shoo-in that they're going to get Wooga Poplar, but my God, Kyle, you got to do everything you can to get this guy because they legitimately they need him. Like
Yes.
they need a wing, a score. A lot of this stuff, all the things that he's going to bring, they could use this so desperately to help fill their roster, especially with Schulga leaving as well. I cannot emphasize enough how much Villanova needs this to happen if they want to be
100%.
considered a tournament team. Now that you have Dixon come back, you add Wooga Poplar, you got me interested. Now
And
I'm
like,
interested in the tournament team here, potentially. I still, it's not a top 25 roster,
no,
but they'll be competitive if they add this guy.
100%. And it almost makes too much sense not to happen. And like saying that means I don't want to, I'm not trying to jinx it or anything, but like it makes so much sense that like I'm concerned it's just not going to happen. Just because that's how things work out a lot of the time. But listen, the competition's Oregon. Oregon's a hell of a school. Dana Altman's a hell of a coach. All he does for the most part is win. Maybe not championships, but he's been to Final Four. He's been consistently in the second weekend of the tournament. At minimum winning a game. He lines Rubik's cubes. I mean, he's one of both of our favorite coaches in college basketball. So I would not blame Wooga Poplar for taking that route, but at the same time, this is a perfect opportunity for him to come back home, play with this Villanova team that needs someone of his caliber. Uh, it just makes so much sense, and I hope he agrees because that would be huge, not only for Villanova but for the Big Five as well. Having someone of that caliber be uh, in our city. So that's that. Um, Cope, we had a lot to go over. I know a lot of transfers, a lot of schedules, a lot of coaches, other miscellaneous things. But any final thoughts here before we sign off?
No, to be quite honest with you, I did a
You
lot of
did your
talking
part.
today.
You
I'm
did your
gonna
part.
go downstairs, put the hockey game on, I'll put the NBA playoffs on, I'll put Mavs Timberwolves on, and then maybe not say a word the rest of the night. I think that sounds like a good idea to me.
That sounds like a great idea. I'm gonna do the same thing. I mean, I'm not gonna I like I haven't been watching this Rangers game while we were recording. It's not taken away from the recording, of course. I'm locked in. I'm locked into both. We got a lot going on here. Great time of year for sports fandom. I know it's gonna slow down after the NBA playoffs and Stanley Cup playoffs conclude when it's just baseball season, but before you know it, we'll have everything back and it'll be October, which is the best sports month, maybe besides March. So that is that. That's all I got to. I also very much want to go down and watch this game as the Rangers just almost scored. And again, okay, we're heating up here. So for Jake Copestick, I am Kyle Morello. Thank you guys for tuning in very much to the Big Five Pod. Of course, If you want to check us out more, like and subscribe to our YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Five Pod. And of course, make sure you listen to the audio-only versions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I'm going to go watch the Rangers. Cope's going to go watch some other sports too. And we'll see you next time.